is where we are today, and it shows you what our current rate plan structure is under the HMO Blue Plan. And you'll note that it's $15 for an office visit, $15 for a specialist, $50 for emergency room. The inpatient hospital copay is $0. The outpatient surgical copay is $0. And you'll see that depending upon what type of prescription the employee or retiree receives, there's a prescription plan, copayment plan that's shown here. And you'll see that that's what our structure is as of this date. Simply rolling those options forward with no changes. And you'll see that's the second column. And if you look at the bottom, you'll see 11.1%. That's no changes at all. The third alternative, which is shown here as alternative number 1, is to establish inpatient hospital co-payments and outpatient surgical payments. You'll see the amounts that are shown here. And you'll note that more or less everything remains the same. And the result of that is a 9% increase in our insurance plan. Not very much. And then the final alternative that's shown here is to go to a tiered payment structure, which, depending upon what tier the employee's physician and hospital, what hospital they go to, you'll see that there's a tiered structure. And that tiered structure has co-payments between $10 on the low side and $20 on the high side. And depending upon what hospital what hospital they are admitted to, there's an additional inpatient co-payment that ranges between $200 and $400. There's an outpatient surgical or day surgery co-payment of $100. And you'll note that there's a slight change in the mail order prescription plan. So the results of this is a 2% increase in the health insurance rate. So to put some numbers to that, 2% is about $90,000. That's the overall impact on the town's budget. 11.1% is about $500,000. So the spread is enormous. And we have been working with our employee groups. We did have a meeting of our insurance advisory committee last week. The document that you have in front of you that shows the range of insurance alternatives was presented. The employee representatives were requested to provide a recommendation back. We'll have another meeting of that committee whereby I expect that there'll be a recommendation made. And then we will continue our discussions with our existing carrier to identify specific plan changes beyond what you see here that will result in a further decrease to the town and employees. So that's an up-to-date status of where we are at with our health insurance discussions. It's, I realize that it's a priority of the board. It's my priority also, because for every dollar that gets spent on health insurance, there aren't monies available for other municipal budgets. So that's the current status on the health insurance. I'd be happy to answer any questions before I move on to the other items.
Steve, I'm just looking at what's on this sheet here. The numbers are off a little bit. Like, you said that on this sheet here, it's $5,021,021.
Yeah,
It's $5,864,000,
hey,
and this one.
that's the insurance company number.
It's a total increase. Is that the total increase not broken down?
No, what the insurance company does is that's their number. That's not my number. So the sheet, the first sheet that I handed out, that's got the little typing on it, that's got the real numbers on it. This is what our insurance company attempts to do when they look at our enrollment. The enrollment is a little bit different too, because what they do is instead of they take an average enrollment. The enrollment numbers that I gave you are a snapshot in time, the most current, up-to-date information that's available on enrollment are the numbers that I gave you earlier. What this is like a 12-month average. And what they then do is take those average enrollments and roll them forward and say this is what your cost is going to be. So I would not pay particular attention to their sheet. beyond what
Yeah,
the
percentage
difference
increases.
the percentages and the differences between the different alternatives is
Yeah.
really what's the key
Okay.
piece.
Greg, when do you expect to get this report back? I assume you're looking at other insurers.
Absolutely. And-
Any idea? I mean,
Nothing that I can comment on this evening because I have not received a copy of the report. One of the things
no,
that,
that's what I meant. There's when, I'm asking when you were
Right.
gonna, when do you expect to get the report back?
I don't know.
You
I
don't know.
asked that question of HR, and unfortunately, the HR individual was not in the office today. I was anticipating he would ask me that question. I don't have that. I will have that information shortly, and I will be happy to pass that along to the board.
So last year, there was the threat of our employees going into the GIC, and then what appears to be a result of a 3.5% increase in health benefits, I think we had last year?
No, we made adjustments,
Pretty much
Level.
even. Level.
Okay.
level,
Even.
and then if there was any increase, it was October town meeting as a result of the number of people on the plan increasing.
Right.
And that was directly result of turnover in the school department, I believe.
That's exactly what it was. It was enrollment-driven.
And was it the year before then about the, when we were threatening to go over to, the possibility of going to the GIC, and we got a surprise, before I was on the board, a surprise low number for an increase on the
Yeah,
premiums?
that was 2 years
That was
ago.
2 years
That was
ago,
2
okay.
years ago,
So
when the
we did
GIC
that.
was making a push, and
Right,
the,
right.
and the health insurance carriers
Okay.
decided to,
Right.
Now, that
It
seems.
was a
Save their
late, a
business.
late good number.
yeah.
Right, and that seems to have subsided now,
Right.
and now we go back up
Because
to
they,
these
they,
huge,
now the GIC is not a threat to them anymore.
at this point, it seems like
Well,
the
there
number
haven't
goes
been a
up,
lot of takers.
Yeah.
you know.
The only thing that would change that is if they change the rules associated with the union's vote.
Right,
Right.
and I recall that too, and, you know, it kind of bothers me, and I'm sure it bothers a lot of people that, I feel that we get played, by insurance companies under these circumstances. There's no way for us to say to HMO, Blue or Blue Cross Blue Shield, to say, well, you know, we're gonna go in this direction, if you wanna walk, you can walk. It'd be nice to be able to do something like that, because, I mean, I think we anticipated that once the GIC quieted down, that these, at least I thought it out, the increases would start shooting up again. So I think that is the state looking at, I thought I read somewhere where the state was looking about possibly opening that,
I think it's the Mass Municipal Association's been pushing that. Also, what was the other, there were two other,
there are 20 mayors that are looking to bring it up as a public
Referendum.
vote,
right.
referendum, yeah.
But the MMA is pushing it, and, but the Speaker of the House and the Senate President were not
Right.
too enamored by the
I
idea.
remember
Right.
reading that article. They seem to talk about protecting the interests of the,
Collective bargaining
well,
process.
the employees, the unions, and the collective bargaining process, and they never seem to consider the people of Massachusetts in their discussions. I found it to be very interesting, so, I don't know, somewhere along the line, I don't even suggest that we go to GIC, I just think that the option to be able to do so and to use it as a bargaining chip on our own would be great. But it is what it is, I guess, and I'm just,
That's why,
Expressing
that's why we're
frustration.
dealing with a budget in
You know.
June.
One of
Yes.
one of the strong arguments being presented on Beacon Hill in relation to this specific issue, among other things, is why cities and towns aren't finding as sympathetic an ear as they had hoped, is that there's a consensus up in Beacon Hill that while the state government has done a pretty good job of negotiating with their collective bargaining units, the cities and towns have not done a good job.
yeah.
And the numbers seem to bear that out to be true. So that, you know, while they're saying, we understand there's a budget crisis at the local level, there's a budget crisis at the state level, and the state provides a certain level of services which are necessary too, so. And as they're trying to balance it out, they're saying, boards of selectmen, administrators, school committees, do your job at the local level at the collective bargaining table where you haven't been doing it all these years, and go back and fight it out. You've been giving it away over the years. Well, now you're looking for the state government to bail you out. And that's why there's the pushback at the legislative level. And the numbers really do ring true.
Yeah, but if we
As
just
far
took it
as,
out of
as
collective
far as
bargaining,
the,
you'd see how
as
good
far
it
as the benefit levels of municipal employees being higher than state employees, including, percentages paid and all that.
is. I can understand.
So,
Yes,
Just a quick follow-up comment on, not on the GIC, but one of the questions that I hear is, why doesn't the town self-insure? And certainly would not recommend that we consider that option. We're too small of a group, and there's too much risk in self-insuring. I've worked in a town that, when I started there, they had a self-insurance pool, and there was always temptation to underfund the self-insurance pool every year and use those monies for other budgetary needs. So you have to exercise extreme fiscal discipline in doing so, and there's great risk. So I would, even though I'm here and I'm saying that we've got a large gap that we need to try to resolve, we know what the number is. The self-insurance is risky in the sense that potentially you roll the dice and you lose, and it costs considerably more than what you budgeted. And you have to raise that amount every year at the end of the fiscal year. So I certainly don't recommend self-insurance. I've looked at it, I've worked with it, I've worked in a town that's done it. We had to change to a premium-based plan, and it cost the town a lot of money. And, but it was a decision that needed to be made. It cost more than money, it cost me my job. So it was, but it was the right decision to make in the long haul. It had to be done, or it would have bankrupted the town. So, the other thing is, that I.
So you're not recommending that?
I'm not recommending it. It was a difficult.
There's no self-preservation,
It was,
interest here or anything?
no, because it was a difficult decision that
I'm
had
sure.
to be made. And it had to be made, or the town wouldn't have been able to pay. The other thing that I hear employees say is, we can go out and this insurer will give us a great rate. And that may be true, that an insurer will give you a great rate for 1 year. But they will not guarantee you a multi-year rate lock. So what happens is, I think as was described earlier, is you get a great rate for 1 year, and the next year you get a 10% increase, or 15% increase. So there's great temptation at looking at someone who may want to buy your business and offer a program that's very attractive, and the rate is very attractive. The problem is, the next year and the year after that, you are likely to be stuck with some fairly large increases. And again, having been through that in another town, I would advise that the current insurer, or someone that we can identify as a result of the review that we're doing of health insurance proposals, including the GIC, would be a more appropriate option than just kind of throwing it out there for anyone who's got health insurance.
Excuse me, are the employees suggesting we look to other specific carriers?
Yes, it came from some of the employee discussions, is that they felt as though there were other plans that might be out there that offer a more attractive rate.
It appears to me, in all the years I've been sitting here, it's pretty much of a crapshoot anyway, depending upon who we have, whether it be HMO Blue or,
Yeah.
I mean, we've had increases 15, 16%, 12%, 8%, 10%, and they have our business.
Yeah,
in the private sector, many of the years I worked when insurance rates were, going up, it was not unlikely to change the insurance carrier every year. The problem in the private sector is, in the public sector, it's kind of hard to do that when you're subject to negotiating
Right,
with,
very right.
half a dozen or a dozen
But
unions.
even if the suggestion's coming from the collective bargaining units, to look to other carriers, which will save us even on this year's premium, at least your baseline that you're starting from is lower than where we're
Yeah.
operating from. why wouldn't we
I mean,
consider it?
No, I would consider it.
You know?
Certainly, we'll look at that
Yeah.
report.
Yeah, yeah, what's the report
Absolutely.
shows there, but